Hello, huge movie fanatic Nate, stopping on by. This time I'm coming at you to review the most recent Amityville movie to have been made. I think it was actually made in 2014, and for reasons we kind of understand now after having seen it, it didn't come out, I think, until basically, now, or I think maybe late last year or something like that. I don't think it probably, if it showed at all, it was probably very limited run, so it kind of just came out on Blu-ray and DVD and stuff. I've reviewed, as you guys may or may not know, I did some Amityville, or basically the reviews of all the Amityville movies I've seen. I did that this spring, and I mentioned in some of them, or one of them, or something like that, somewhere along in one of those videos, I think I mentioned that I was very interested in seeing the most recent edition, Amityville: The Awakening, because for the very first time since basically the third movie, although we did see the house briefly in the fourth made-for-TV one. For all intents and purposes, this is the first time, or at least out of the movies that I've seen, the kind of the classic house look returns. And from what I understand, they built basically the whole house, or at least the exterior, to match the classic Amityville house from the first three movies. So that was very, very exciting. And I was actually able to come across this. Previously viewed from Family Dollar. Unfortunately, it came like this, DVD, but I actually got this for $2, and I'm like, you know what? I'll buy it on DVD for $2. So I got Amityville: The Awakening, previously viewed for $2 on DVD like this from Family Video, and now my my curiosity can be put to rest for this movie because I've seen it. So yay! First off the bat, it's absolutely amazing. They did an absolutely amazing job on making the exterior of the classic Amityville house. It's absolutely amazing to see for the very first time featured in a movie, or at least out of the movies I've seen. The classic Amityville house look, as we all know, it kind of was featured a little bit in the remake, but not really. So this is the first time out of the Amityville movies that I've seen, and probably any of them that have been made, the classic Amityville house look has come back. And I must say that is very, very much appreciated by this particular reviewer. Unfortunately, I mean, they went through all the trouble to build this thing. Unfortunately, it doesn't, they could have had like a couple scenes that actually took place outside. I mean, a couple more scenes that may be more focused on the house in the background or something, maybe a picnic scene in front of the house, something to actually just give it more of a... It's a shame because they built this absolutely fantastic exterior replica of the house, but in my opinion they didn't really it's not featured very much in the movie. It's just kind of an afterthought, which is really kind of a bummer. But regardless, it's still cool to have that, even though it's not really necessarily featured very prominently. It's still definitely cool to have that old classic house look in this movie. So thank you very much. So basically, I guess Bella Thorne, if I'm saying that correctly, plays Belle. Funny how Bella plays Belle in this movie. Basically, Jennifer Jason Leigh is the mom, and she's got I think a twin brother and then like a younger sister. And basically, the premise of this movie is this is like 40 years after the events of, in 1974, the DeFeo murders or whatever. So 40 years later, Jennifer Jason Leigh and daughter and son and younger daughter move into this house, and for a better life or a new start or whatever. Basically, the Belle character is this relatively attractive, hot teenager chick in this movie, and but this is the first time I think I'd really ever seen her in anything. And the brother is like this complete and total vegetable. That we just see way too often in this movie. He's like, we see him, the movie is basically about him, and it's just like, that's one of my problems with the movie, is like we barely see the house, or there's barely any kind of, how I said like in my review of the first movie, I think, that the house is just a huge character for me of the Amityville, or at least like the first three Amityville movies. And this movie is just like, although they built the damn thing, it's just like barely, you almost forget that this is an Amityville movie, which is a bummer. And this vegetable, all shriveled up kid in the bed who is it just gets so grotesque to look at. I can say that not being mean, because it's obviously all movie fakery, and they got a fake body laying on the bed, and they did the old Tom Savini thing where there's this fake skinny ass shriveled up body on the bed, and then the real actor's head's just sticking out of the pillow, attached to the fake neck like Tom Savini stuff. and you just get so sick of looking at this vegetable kid in the bed. It's basically, the movie basically turns out to be about him. But that's the premise of this movie. You know, this family, you know, moves to the Amityville house. Ooh, scary. So of course this is a brand new school for the character of Belle in this movie. This, you know, she plays this kind of goth. Well, she's a lot more goth looking, and towards the beginning of the movie, where she goes to high school, she wears this nasty ass black lipstick, and it's just like, I hate when they take a freaking hot chick and just make her look gross. Of course, you know, goth people would probably disagree and say goth look is not gross, but it's fun, and I disagree and say no, it's not. But that's just a matter of personal preference, and I'm not going to say I'm right and they're wrong. It's just a you know, a matter of personal preference and taste. I'm just not a big on the goth look myself, but to each their own. You know, if they like it, go for it. But you know, obviously not long after Belle starts, well, actually the first couple days or first week of school, she, you know, meets this one guy who kind of befriends her, and you know, this other guy kind of befriend her or whatever, and she finds out more and more that, you know, this house that they moved to actually has got a huge, you know, whatever, you know, huge reputation in the town or whatever. It's the Amityville house, the famous house from the DeFeo murders and the haunting that took place a year later and all this kind of stuff. So then of course she's, you know, the character of Belle's really pissed off and confronts mom at this point, like, why when were you going to tell us about this house and what happened here and yada yada yada, all you know, all this stuff you've seen in movies before. And Jennifer Jason Leigh plays it like, well, you know, we've got so much going on with the vegetable son in the bed and stuff, I just, you know, maybe I was going to get to it eventually, whatever. So another plot point about this movie is, you know, this mom was all hopeful that this injury that, you know, the state that her son is in, this vegetative state, was reversible. This doctor guy, incidentally played by Kurtwood Smith of RoboCop fame, of course. Kurtwood Smith has basically a couple scenes in this movie and kind of just goes away, but it's always fun to see these actors from my youth and, you know, more actors that have been in all kinds of stuff. As long as I've been really watching movies, more or less, it's cool to see them as they age and stuff. And Kurtwood Smith plays this doctor, I think in probably 2 scenes or whatever, and this guy, of course, is not very optimistic about any chance of recovery for her, you know, vegetable son, and Jennifer Jason Leigh, being the mom, is obviously more hopeful and, you know, that things can turn around and stuff like that. And well, I guess for her sake and the son's sake, we hope so too. So early on in the movie, the character of Belle is seen in really, really yummy underwear and just in her shirt, just sitting on the bed. And of course, you know, one thing they do is, you know, do the fly shtick a little bit in this movie, which is, you know, appreciated. Of course, I don't know if they're, you know, if these flies are CG, or later on they're definitely CG, but I don't know if when you see like a single fly or whatever it's CG or not. But when upstairs, and Belle basically is in the 3rd floor with the, you know, the Amityville, the house's eyes thing, which is kind of cool. So her bedroom's up there, and there's this really cool scene where, really kind of sexy scene where there's a fly on the wall and she smacks it, you know, and it kind of has to be bent over and to smack the fly, and then she's, you know, another fly on the wall and she smacks that. So it's kind of cool, really cool scene where she's smacking flies because her ass is kind of aimed at camera. And to be honest, I could have, you know, watched her swat at flies for probably 15 more minutes, but unfortunately there's only you know, brief part of time where she's actually seen swatting at flies. But what she ends up finding is this wallpaper coming off the wall, and I think in a later scene she ends up peeling off the wallpaper more, and then looks online to see, like, you know, blood, you know, from a crime scene of the DeFeo murders, you know, blood splattered wall, and you know, peels off the wallpaper to see that the blood is kind of still there. It's just like, oh, that's kind of a cool plot point to actually, like, they just, you know, didn't even bother painting over it. They just kind of put wallpaper over it. So that's kind of a cool thing that happened early on in the movie, like maybe within the first 30 minutes, is her swatting at flies was really, really fun, and caught myself watching that moment more than once. And then later on, I think in the movie, she peels down the wallpaper a little more and sees the blood splatter wall. It's just like, so that's one point that I thought was really cool for an Amityville sequel, and I appreciated that. So maybe halfway into the movie or something like that, this one guy and this one girl from her high school are kind of like this guy knows all about Amityville, of course living there, he knows all about the lore and stuff. So one thing that I thought was particularly kind of clever about this movie, and the first time I'd seen it in an Amityville movie, the kid's like, have you ever seen this? And he pulls up the like MGM DVD of Amityville Horror, and I'm like, oh cool man, that's just a little bit of like Scream-esque, movie within the movie, or self-awareness or whatever. And she's like, no. And so this movie is really kind of cool in the sense that it plays as a, I don't know, it's like it's not a remake, or it's more like a reboot, or a sequel, but yet it takes place outside of the films, and it's kind of a cool, it does it in a really subtle way. It doesn't make a big deal about it, but what ends up happening is the kid's like, oh man, what would be really cool is if we could watch the original Amityville Horror in the Amityville house. I mean, how cool would that be? And she's like, fine. And then he's like, well, we gotta watch it. If we do this, we gotta watch it at 3:15 a.m. And it's just like, me being a fan of the first three movies and stuff, it was just like, you know what? Just from a fan geek point, that's really cool. Movie night might not be necessarily that great, but those details were appreciated. Just how cool, the idea of like watching the Amityville Horror in the Amityville house at 3:15 is, you gotta admit, that's pretty cool. This kid guy from high school also mentions this other plot point, which I don't think has been something that was really featured, at least in any of the Amityville movies that I've seen, which was a kind of a cool addition to this particular movie. And basically, she saw, in the yard or front yard, or some of the grass around the house, this circle thing, and the kid says, "Oh yeah, that's a bounding circle to keep." They put those in the old days around, evil spots to try to keep the evil in. That's a kind of a cool plot point in this movie that will, play out, a plot point that will come more into play later on towards the movie. So again, just like kind of watching the Amityville Horror in the Amityville house at 3:15 a.m., that was another cool kind of a plot point that was really, never anything that was mentioned in any of the movies before that I had seen. And so that was another cool element to add to the movie, of the bounding circle, and the way it plays in towards the end, or at the end of the movie, was kind of cool as well. We'll get to that later. So when they're actually about to watch Amityville Horror, the kid pulls out the DVDs of Amityville Horror and then Amityville 2, and he says that that's a prequel, so I brought it just in case. And then I was hoping he'd pull out 3, but then he pulls out the remake, and he's like, well, then I didn't know what you'd want to watch, so I brought the remake. And it's kind of cool because the girl's like, remakes suck. So that was just kind of a cool little inside joke, and something obviously that that Blumhouse probably thinks themselves, and something that I definitely agree with as well. So as a kind of more or less a remake hater, that was a kind of another cool line that was just probably put in there for obviously us remake haters. It's just like when they said remakes suck, man, let's watch the original. I was like, hell yeah. So maybe somewhere around the halfway mark of this movie, we end up finding out what the hell caused her brother's condition. It's like 2 years before this movie takes place. Like, I don't know, Belle was just out, like so many teen girls, just all confused and doing all this and that, and presumably sent this, she says pictures, but I mean, I think we can assume that they're naked pictures or pictures of her nudity to this boy. And then of course she woke up the next morning, and her line was that then the pictures were all over the internet. And basically her brother, who was able-bodied up until 2 years ago, we're finding out what happened to make her brother the way he is in this whole movie. Her brother went over to confront him, and he was up in the high, 2 stories up or something, and I think he got pushed out the window. So that's what happened to the brother 2 years prior, I think. And so Belle's always been really, really guilty, and felt very much to blame for, her brother's condition, which is understandable. But at the same time, I guess, it's not completely and totally her fault. She probably didn't ask him to go confront the guy or whatever. She could never really know what would happen. So although it's understandable that she feels guilty, it's really not her fault. It's kind of one of those things that's just like, you can look at it either way or whatever. But we end up finding maybe halfway through the movie that's the reason. We know from the beginning that there's some guilt, but it's kind of kept secret, and it isn't until halfway through the movie or whatever she tells this other girl character from high school the story, to obviously fill the audience in as well. So that's kind of cool, and it's kind of cool that they waited, instead of just spilling the beans right away, to kind of just leave it a mystery for a while, and then explain to the audience what the hell the backstory about halfway through. So yay. So as I've already said, in my opinion, there's way too much of her brother, you know, this vegetable kid just sitting with his fake corpse body and his real head attached to this. There's way too much. I mean, the movie's basically about this, you know, vegetable kid, and when they come to they move into this Amityville house, there's this very slow progression of like him seeming to improve. All of a sudden he opens his eyes, all of a sudden he's conscious to the point where he can have a conversation with the this little thing on the screen where you can use his eyes to spell out words and stuff like that. So as the movie progresses, maybe after the 30-minute mark or something like that, the brother is slowly, slowly over time getting better and better, and then at some point, you know, the kids at the high school are like, you know, the boy and girl, like, well, it's an Amityville house, so maybe, you know, what your brother's doing isn't your brother doing it. And at one point Bill asks, you know, him, and he's able to talk with the computer screen in his eyes, you know, is it you in there, or is someone else in there? And he's like, there's someone else. And he says with the computer screen in his eyeballs, you know, kill me please. And she takes off the oxygen, you know, disconnects the oxygen from his neck, and the mom comes in, what the hell are you doing? And only to see like his brother's chest move, like, oh my gosh, brother can breathe on his own. So he just, you know, he seems to be getting better and better, and yay. And it's just like, at this point, you know, you're just so sick of, I mean, it's, you know, this is very clear at this point that the movie's just basically about this vegetable brother, and I don't really, it's just gross, and I don't really care about that, but whatever, that the movie doesn't care, but that I don't care, because that's what the movie did. So I can go take a flying leap, I guess, as far as the movie's concerned. But, you know, so as the movie progresses, the brother just seems to get better and better and better, and oh boy. And meanwhile, like, there's like, the only thing the Amityville house does is the window open, you know, the window's open towards the beginning of the movie. She goes down and closes it and opens itself. Ooh, that's like, meanwhile, the Amityville house is just in the background and plays basically little to no part in this movie. Whatsoever. And I can understand, you know, not milking the house too much, but at the same time, in my opinion, they're not doing enough house stuff, so it's just like, So it turns out, basically towards the end of the movie, maybe the hour mark or something like that, the Jennifer Jason Leigh character, she's the mom, basically confesses to the Belle character that, well, the reason she, you know, brought her son, her family and her son to this house is because she knew about the history of the house and thought that maybe, you know, bringing the son, this vegetable son, to this demonic house would somehow spark something in him, or activate him, or reactivate him, or was like her last ditch effort to try to get some kind of, you know, response, or some kind of something, for anything from her vegetable son or whatever. So that's kind of a cool plot point, to be honest. I got to admit, you know, something that, you know, is kind of cool for an Amityville sequel, you know, reboot, whatever the hell you want to call this thing, an Amityville movie. My only problem with that plot point is, like I say, it just, you know, it dwells too much on the invalid, or the vegetable kid. And, you know, you can do the vegetable kid, but at the same time do some fun Amityville house stuff. I mean, like I say, there's little to none in it, and being an Amityville movie, I would regard that as kind of a big problem. It's like doing Texas Chainsaw Massacre without a chainsaw in it, you know. It's just like, and it takes place in, you know, Missouri. It's just like, you know, it's Amityville something, the awakening, and that's what the awakening means, like bringing the vegetable son to the house kind of awakens him. The only problem is, what we come to find out is, it doesn't awaken him, it just possesses him, and the evil in the house basically just uses his body as a vessel. And towards the end of the movie, of course, it's just become, you know, he basically fully physically, you know, possesses him, and fully physically, you know, reinvigorates him or whatever. And first thing he does, is being possessed by the house, or the evil in the house, is grab a shotgun and basically tries to, you know, go around and kill the family, just like things have, you know, went badly 40 years prior. So basically he tries to shoot little sis, of course. He ends up shooting and killing mom, I think. I think mom gets shot and killed by the brother, so that's kind of a bummer. But tries to kill sis, and, you know, being possessed, just like, you know, Ronnie DeFeo in the story or whatever, is, you know, now this vegetable kid is now possessed and fully physically revigorated, and walking around trying to kill people. And I'm sure I bet mom's real glad that she brought him there, because it ended up ending her life. But I guess she didn't necessarily know that would happen. Or maybe that was her way of, her long-winded, or big grand plan of committing suicide. It would be much easier to jump out of a building, but whatever. So in a very fitting bit of the end scene, Bro and the formerly vegetable brother and Belle goes arguing up on the third floor, the Amityville eye holes, famous windows, and go crashing out, arguing, or they're struggling over the gun or whatever, and they go crashing out the window, just like the way, of course, he originally got, or that kid originally got hurt. And what's really kind of cool about what the whole, what did I call it, what was it called? Bounding circle, I think. What was cool about the bounding circle plot point is that it plays a big part in this movie. Is basically, I've already said that the kid, the vegetable kid, wasn't invigorated in the sense that he was brought back as his normal self. Basically, what happened is the evil just took over his body. So at that point, she just realizes that the evil took over his body, and she's going to basically drag him past this bounding circle, which will hopefully, kind of in a very, very short, abbreviated exorcism without a priest, which is kind of the best way to do it, or whatever, or at least in a movie, because that's another thing about this movie. For all you people that are just so sick of seeing a heavy, priest and or church presence in your Amityville movies, I don't think there's one. There isn't. There's no priests or any religious presence, well, except for like a crucifix. Like Mom, I think, holds up a crucifix at the end of the movie, but there's no priests or anything like that, or any religious quote-unquote officials or representatives in this movie. So that was refreshing for an Amityville movie. So basically, what ends up happening at the end of the movie is, of course, she drags this brother, who I guess is mortally wounded after having fallen out the window. She landed on him, so I guess that's why she's not mortally wounded, but even the possessed body is now wounded, and trying to trick her and plead and say, oh, sis, and trying to trick her. Well, she's a hot ass young teenage girl, so she knows better. So she's going to drag him past this bounding circle, and then it's really kind of cool what happens, and they use obviously computer generated technology where it's just this high shot of her dragging him past the bounding circle, and then once she does that to his normal kind of reinvigorated body, shrivels back up into the just basically skin on bones, shriveled up, vegetable state that the boy was in when they arrived at the house. It's kind of a cool gimmick and really worked well in the, computer-generated effect of him shriveling back up into his former self. And of course, I think at that point, I don't remember if I think at that point, since the body was wounded again or further, I think at that point when he shrivels up, I can't remember, but I think the brother dies. I don't even remember at all, but it doesn't really matter. But that's basically the movie. I mean, it is kind of cool that they did try to do something different and had the whole thing of Jennifer Jason Leigh bringing her vegetable son to the house to try to get a reaction was kind of a cool idea. My only problem, of course, as I already said with that is, I mean, it's an Amityville movie. You're in the Amityville house. Like, do some Amityville house stuff and show the house. I mean, that's one of my biggest complaints with the movie. So I mean, the movie as a movie really isn't that horrible. I know it's getting a lot of crap, and there's a lot worse movies out there than Amityville: The Awakening, in particular. Amityville, whatever, 4 and on, probably worse than this movie. Is it better than the remake? I don't know if it's better than the remake. It's really hard to say. It does a lot of the same things with these kind of images of just creepy skeletal brother jump scare shit. I don't know. It's tough to say. I suppose it's right along on par probably with the remake. Obviously it's kind of fun to have this hot young chick to look at throughout the whole movie, and I wish she would have been in her underwear for more of the movie, swatting at more flies, bent over. But alas, that's only just happens briefly in the movie, so oh well. What ends up happening with news reports, the beginning of the movie, starts with kind of news reports of the events of '74, and the end of the movie, a kind of cool bookend ends with a news reporter guy voice talking about the events in this movie, and it's kind of funny that the girl it's kind of, sketchy. We don't exactly know how it turns out for her, but the girl is kind of, in the news report, blamed for the deaths because the boy was, as told by the Kurtwood Smith character, was completely incapable of going, picking up a shotgun and going around the house shooting people. So what's kind of funny, and they should have embellished on it a little more. It's kind of really unclear towards the end of the movie. They should have made a little more point to explain it and show her actually being jailed up. The Belle character, it would have been funny to, because from what it sounds like in the end news broadcast audio is that, basically the Belle character is blamed for the murder of her mom. And I think they blame her for the murder of the brother and attempted murder of the younger sister. Of course, the younger sister says the same kind of thing that Belle is saying, is that the brother came alive. So that's one thing that she's got on her defense, is that the younger sister is saying that in fact what the older sister is saying about the brother being the killer is true. So like I say, they leave it really sketchy, not quite understandable if she's sent to prison or jail, or if she's convicted of the crimes of killing mom and attempting to kill sis. And like I say, I can't remember if the brother dies or not, but that's pretty much Amityville, The Awakening. Luckily it's kind of a more shorter movie, like 80 minutes ish or something like that. I'm gonna, I'll go as high as 1 star out of 4 stars for Amityville: The Awakening. I don't regret buying it. I watched it once and then I wanted to watch it again. I got it I don't know, in June or something like that, and I wanted to watch it again so I'd have it a little more, more recent of a viewing, so I could review it more better. But yeah, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's definitely not as bad as it could have been. It's probably about as bad as I thought it would be. And like I say, one of the things that I was disappointed in was just how much we gotta, the court, like I say, the Vegetable Brother it should have been just called Vegetable Brother: The Awakening, because he's the center point of the movie, and to be honest, you just get sick of it. But thank you very much for watching this review. As always, we'll catch you on the next one.